In 1942, Mafia boss Charles "Lucky" Luciano was held in one of America's most dreaded correctional facilities, the Clinton Prison in Dannemora, New York, a maximum security prison often described as Little Siberia. Luciano, who is widely considered the father of modern organized crime in the United States and was described by prosecutors as the greatest living gangster in America and the most dangerous mobster, was serving a 30 to 50-year sentence for compulsory prostitution and running a prostitution racket. Even though he was behind bars, Luciano had as much influence over the mafia in the city of New York as he did before he went to prison. To show you just how influential he was, Lucky continued to run his enterprise from behind the walls of Little Siberia. His influence even extended to the prison yard, where he had other prisoners do his chores. He also forced one of the inmates to become his personal chef. Lucky, however, was desperate to get out of prison, and soon his opportunity presented itself, and you can bet that he took it. At the time, World War II was in full swing. Luciano, who was incarcerated and due to the severity of his crimes was basically an enemy of the state, had no idea that soon he was going to be at the center of one of America's vital missions during the war. Well, here is how it all began. In the space of 3 months after the December 7th, 1941, Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States lost 120 merchant ships to surface raiders and German U-boats in the Battle of the Atlantic. This put the Navy in a desperate situation, but they thought they could still control the harbor. However, when in February 1942, the captured French ship, the Normandy, which was being refitted as a naval troop ship in the New York harbor, caught fire and was rumored to have been sabotaged, they were forced to admit that they didn't have control of the harbor. That was when they decided to do something that, before this time, would have been termed crazy. Meanwhile, years later, it was discovered that the fire wasn't due to sabotage, but was the result of a welding mistake. But back in 1942, they didn't know that, so investigators feared sabotage by loyalists to the Italian fascist government since the area surrounding the dock was occupied by predominantly Italian-American fishermen. Trying to be their usual smart selves, Navy intelligence assigned over 100 agents to investigate possible supporters of the Italian Prime Minister, Benito Mussolini, within the dockworker population on the waterfront. Their efforts were, however, useless. They couldn't get into the unions, they couldn't get shopkeepers, longshoremen, or anyone around the waterfront to talk to them. The Mafia controlled the waterfront and nobody was going to cooperate with the government. With their intelligence efforts yielding no result, the Navy contacted Meyer Langsy, a known associate of Luciano and one of the non-Italian associates of the Mafia, about a deal with Lucky Luciano. They needed to get to Luciano because he was one of the highest-ranking Mafia members both in Italy and the U.S., and they also didn't want the FBI to find out about their secret arrangement. The operation was codenamed Operation Underworld. To facilitate negotiations, Luciano was secretly transferred from Little Siberia to the Great Meadow Correctional Facility in Comstock, New York, which was a much more comfortable prison and was closer to New York City. After a series of secret meetings, the state of New York, Luciano, and the Navy struck a deal. He guaranteed the full assistance of the mob in providing intelligence to the Navy. Ultimately, Luciano agreed to cooperate with authorities in hopes of consideration for an early release from prison. A smart move by all standards. Lucky Luciano ordered that any suspicious activity along the docks and waterfronts be reported to the authorities. In addition, a close associate of Luciano, Albert Anastasia, who controlled the docks and ran Murder, Inc., allegedly guaranteed that there would be no dockworker strikes throughout the war. In return, the state of New York agreed to commute Luciano's sentence. In essence, the Mafia played a vital but secret role in World War II, using its power and control over New York City ports, dock workers, and fishermen to keep an eye out for German U-boats and other suspicious characters. The Mafia even employed its leverage to get the Navy inside an off-limits foreign consulate, believed to have crucial information on the Nazis. All the while, the FBI was kept in the dark. For the Navy, they were surprised to learn that not only would the Mafia be ready to help, but they were also happy to. Many of them were loyal, and they loved the United States of America. Just in case you are wondering why the mob was so eager to assist the Navy, Langsy, who was a Jewish American, and other Jewish gangsters wanted revenge for the Nazis' oppression of the Jews. On the other hand, Luciano and the Mafia also wanted revenge on Prime Minister Benito Mussolini and the fascist regime in Italy. In a brutal crackdown on the mafia, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini had earlier directed the prefect of Palermo, Cesare Mori, to eradicate the Sicilian mafia. By 1928, fascists had arrested over 11,000 suspected mafia members and driven many more into hiding, even as many fled Sicily, including future Five Families bosses Joseph Bonanno and Carlo Gambino. It's worth noting that Luciano's actual influence is uncertain, but the authorities did observe that the incessant dock workers' strikes stopped after the deal was reached with Luciano. Also, after the deal, no other American ships were destroyed, so it's safe to say that Operation Underground was a success. But the cooperation between the Navy and the Mafia didn't end there. In 1943, as the war progressed, the Allied forces began planning an invasion of Sicily, and the government once again turned to a familiar but unlikely ally, the Mafia, with Luciano once again playing a vital role. For the operation, which was codenamed Operation Husky, Luciano's associates assisted the Allied forces by providing maps of the island's harbors, photographs of its coastline, and names of trusted contacts inside the Sicilian Mafia, who also wished to see Mussolini defeated. Luciano and his associates, through their Sicilian contacts, were also able to provide the Americans with key information and the logistical support needed for the invasion. Lucky directed Calogero Vizzini to assist the Allies in the invasion of Italy. Vizzini, who spent 6 days on an American tank, guiding Allied forces through the mountain pass and directing his Sicilian Mafia to eliminate Italian snipers in the mountains, became the central character in the history of direct Mafia support for the Allies during Operation Husky. Also, another Mafia boss, Vito Genovese, offered his services to the U.S. Army and became an interpreter and advisor to the U.S. Army military government in Naples. At the end of the war, in the summer of 1945, Luciano, who the whole time was still behind bars, petitioned the state of New York for executive clemency. He argued that his cooperation in both Operation Underworld and Operation Husky warranted his immediate freedom. Embarrassed that they had to recruit organized crime to help during the war, naval authorities declined to confirm Luciano's claim. However, on January 4, 1946, New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey, the former prosecutor who placed Luciano into prison, granted Luciano's appeal for clemency on the condition that he did not resist deportation to Italy, where he was born. Although Luciano was upset, he had to leave America on a ship on February 9, 1946, never to return to the U.S. But despite his exile, Charles Lucky Luciano remained a powerful figure within the Mafia in both Italy and the U.S. until he died in 1962. If you enjoyed this video, kindly like and subscribe to our channel for more. Until next time, stay safe.